Hey everyone, I want to welcome you officially to the Futuresoft Launch and Learn. And before I go on into today's session, just to give us a little bit of background about what Launch and Learn is and why we decided to do this at Futuresoft. So at the beginning of the year, we we had we had several strategy sessions internally and with our clients, right? And in reviewing 2020 for us, it was a lot of it came with a lot of ups and downs, and especially for businesses as well. Um, One of the things we saw ourselves do last year a lot was trainings. We helped a lot of African businesses and Nigerian businesses to stay at top of their game um, by helping them, leverage on digital tools that were available. Um, Now we're in a new year, um, but what we see is that we are still riding on the back of the challenges, the problems, and the situations that came with 2020. So this means that the problems are still real, and there's still all of these challenges for businesses. So we decided that we were going to double down on our efforts to help businesses learn every single thing they need to learn, and we always go back to their strategy and have something for every single time that they are faced with a challenge. Um, so that's why we came up with the Launch and Learn. So Launch and Learn is a platform that we have always had in Futuresoft as an internal um, training platform. But we're trying it open now to everybody. So you'll be learning everything that we're learning. You'll be learning what we're doing. You'll learn about our strategies that we're currently using for ourselves and our clients. And so we're really excited to be sharing all of this with you, and we hope that you are just as excited as as we are. So today is this is the first edition of our Launch and Learn this year, and I'm really excited to be talking to us about something that I feel is really important. Um, Last year, um, what we saw last year was that with a lot of businesses going online or migrating online, their communication, also moved online, which means for a lot of businesses it was the first. But um, they had to they saw themselves creating more content, communicating in a different way, reaching out to customers in a way that it wasn't that they were not used to. Um, and this was a challenge, right, for a lot of brands and businesses who this was new to. And for people who already created content, it meant that, I mean, you needed to step up your game, right? And so the, you know, the ability to be able to create valuable content over and over again became a challenge. Um, and that is why today I'm going to be talking about repurposing content in 2021. So basically, what repurposing content um, is using content that's already valuable, that has already worked for you, not duplicating it, right? But making it useful in a different format, in a different platform, and then thereby eliminating the process of having to think about that content, having to think about the strategies behind the content, having to think about the concepts behind the content, right? So only what you have to think about now is the distribution of that content. So I'm just going to dive straight um, into today's session. But before we talk about repurposing content, I would like to give us a little bit of background. So if you are new to content marketing, um, next few slides will explain, why content is important, and different tips that would help you always have content. So the first thing that I want to talk about to discuss is the phrase "content is king." This is something that we've heard once, or too many times, right? Now, the amount of content that's been published over the last few months, in fact, over the last few years, but increasingly over the last few months, right, has grown, exponentially. There have been tons of videos, blogs, social media posts, podcasts. There is a piece of content for almost anything that you're looking for online. So if you search for how to make jollof rice, there's probably a podcast on that. It's probably a blog post on that. There's a YouTube video on that. Somebody making that. There are all sorts of you content for these kind of things, and for whatever it is that you want to look for. A couple of years ago, if you go online and you search for um, certain things, 10 years ago, you'd still have Google results that will tell you no results found. You get the page that no results was found. But that's very, very rare. I don't think that in the last 5 years or 6 years I've looked for anything. Even when I search for the weirdest things or look for the weirdest things on Google, there's always a result for whatever I'm looking for. It may not be relevant, but there's a result for it. That tells you that over the last few years, the amount of content that has been created has grown so much that there is content that contains any keyword that you want to search right now. So if you're new to content, now what having a lot of content has created is now the challenge, for being relevant. Because there's now so many things out there. The challenge is now not that you have content. The challenge is your content relevant? Are you posting enough to be seen, to stand out from the crowd? And so I'm going to share this, a couple of tips that will help you to consistently create valuable content, not just create content, but create valuable content. So my first tip is to have clarity, right? And I am very particular about clarity, right? It's just as important, or even almost more important than every other thing. Clarity here in this sense is whether you're a personal brand or you're a corporate brand or a business. Defining your brand messaging pillars and the tone that you want to communicate these messages is very, very important to help you stay in focus, right? So brands that have a focus tend to always find themselves creating valuable content consistently around their messaging pillars. So your messaging pillars, you may ask, what are your messaging pillars? Your messaging pillars are just basically keywords or phrases that guide what you stand for as a brand, the solutions you provide as a brand, your values as a brand, right? And your tone basically is how you communicate that. So I'm going to give you an example. So if, for example, you are a business that has um, 50 people working there, 30 of them are women or 40 of them are women, right? For a specific reason, because you are a women-focused brand, or you have a mix of men and women, right? Equal men and women. That's something to talk about, right? If this is something that you value as a brand, to know that okay, your messaging should always communicate that you stand for quality. You always give, your offices and your business um encourages, things like this. um if you are, for example, a made in Nigeria brand, right? The fact that you're made in Nigeria and you support local content can be something that is part of your messaging pillars. And that can drive every part of your communication. Every time you talk about your product, you want to mention that it is made in Nigeria. You want to mention how your product supports local content, supports local talent. These are things you want to talk about. Yeah, there are other things that surround your messaging pillars. These are, again, your values. It could be that you are an excellent brand. It could be that you stand for something like I just talked about before. So these messaging pillars will guide you. Now, if you're a service company, you may be asking, what are my messaging pillars going to be like, right? So I would use my personal brand for example, right? I like to, on my Instagram, if you go on my Instagram, I communicate on my Instagram as an expert when it comes to digital strategy, when it comes to digital content creation, and I communicate around these lines. And why is this very important? The moment you lose focus on what you want to communicate, it becomes hard to create content. It's weird. It almost looks like you can create anything, right? But it becomes hard because you wake up on certain days and you feel like everything you've created is wrong. Um, um, your content doesn't align with your goals that you have ahead, and that becomes a problem. But once there's this alignment, you just know what to say, right? So I'll always have notes that say this week, whatever content I'm creating for this client, they must talk about this, they must talk about this, they must talk about this, right? And once that is settled, it's easy for me to follow through. Most times when we have challenges creating content, it's not because we lack the ideas, because we have too many, the scope is too big, and we're struggling to find what is relevant to the brand. Now, your brand tone in this case again is how do you now communicate your messaging, right? Are you a very funky brand? Are you youthful? Do you communicate because you're communicating to an older generation? Would you normally say things like yo, hey, hello, or you would always greet like good morning, good afternoon, good evening, right? Are you a warm brand, right? Warm in the sense that your posts feel cuddly. You feel like while you're promoting your products or your services, you communicate in a way that people just read your emails and they laugh. They always want to come back. Or you feel like, no, you're a more serious brand. So you have to have this in check, right? This consistency is what attracts people to you. So, for example, there are a couple of brands that I really like that, have consistent communication style. An example would be the Sweet brand, or yeah, um, TikTok, candy brand TikTok, right? TikTok has a very, very playful feelings in their communication and every single thing that they post on their channel. So even when they're sending you emails or any kind of communication at all, you always feel that vibe, right? And there are brands who feel like, nah, this is too childish or this is too playful for me, and they communicate in a different way. Now, there's no advantage to communicating any kind of way. You'll attract people who resonate with the way you communicate, right? And that's why it's important for you to stick, to a particular tone or have a tone in a way that you communicate, because people like to be spoken to in a certain way. And when they're not sure who you are or where you stand or your position in their life, then they're not going to stand with you, right? And that becomes a problem. They're just going to stumble on your post, they're going to stumble on your brand, as opposed to having you at top of their mind and always like coming back to see what you're communicating. Now, I spent so much time talking about clarity because, like I said, it's an important part of this session. Then the other thing that I want to talk about is drafting your ideas as they come to you. Now, this may sound very, very cliche, a very cliche thing to say. You've heard like 1 million times people saying that write things as they come to you. And I'll say this, like the biggest lie you tell yourself is that you remember when you want to create content. But content, like somebody described, is like energy, is like a vibe that comes, right? And it doesn't always come, when you need it, right? Especially because maybe sometimes you need to create content and you're almost like under pressure, or you just realize you need to do stuff, or it's a task, it becomes a problem, right? When creating content is a task, it's harder to have all of these ideas, right? But before it becomes a task, before it's due, right? You would have the weirdest ideas or the most exciting ideas in the weirdest places, right? When these ideas comes, write them down. When you see materials that will be useful to your content creation, draft them out. An example would be me, like, researching for something totally random and finding the picture of a black man, right? An African man in a new house. And I'm like, yeah, this would be great for my clients who, has a real estate company. And then he's excited. And then maybe I get the post idea that, I want to talk about this. And this is what I want to do with this post. I immediately draft the idea down, right? So that it's easy and it comes back to me. And I would save that picture, especially because you know how hard it is in this part of the world to find valuable content for Black people. So when I stumble on images like this, I always use them. So it's very important to draft your ideas as they come. Um, the other part, the other part I'm going to talk about right now is leveraging trending topics in your niche. Now, this is something that has proved to be very, very relevant in the past. For me, I have used this very, very often. So when you are sort of like you are not sure of what you're supposed to be, creating content around, what I do is go into communities that have people in my niche, or go to platforms. I mean, I already have people in my tribe, or people who I follow, who are creating certain topics and content around certain topics. So I go back to these, channels. I see what is trending. I see what people are talking about. That gives you a hint on what to create. Especially, so I'm going to explain when you're creating content, there are two types of content you can create. There are topical content and there are evergreen content. Now, those topical content are content that they may not be relevant for a very long time, but they're relevant now. And most times, why it's very, very important to have content that would be relevant in, forever, right? You will miss out on the engagement, you miss out on the eyeballs that you would get when you create around content or around topics and subjects that are trending right now. So leveraging on topics in your niche is very, very important. Um, the other part I'm going to talk about here is consuming more content for inspiration. Now, this is something I do a lot, right? And this is not the same as um, copying and pasting somebody's work. It's not that. When I talk about consuming more content for inspiration, like I said, for inspiration, it's very important that you understand that um, you the amount of content you are exposed to influences the quality of content that you create over time, right? So, like I said before in my previous points, find relevant communities that are in line with your vision, that are in line with your values, that create content around the things that you like to communicate as well. Consume all of this content. This is going to help you understand what people are looking for, what people are creating, what kind of content people are engaging with, and this will inform, your decision to create what kind of content as opposed to creating some other kind of content. Now, another angle to this would be earlier when we started this training, I talked about how um how there's so many content that's been created now, right? And if you go on the web, there's almost a blog for anything that you're searching for. Um, but that doesn't mean that there's no opportunity for you to create, right? People are evolving every single day. How they want to consume content is changing. So there might be information about certain topics, but not in the way that I want to consume um that particular content, right? So if I'm an audio person and it's available in a blog format, right? So you can look at this and then create a podcast for it. So there's and the other part that I really love, and I was speaking to a friend earlier about this, was how there's so much content on the internet right now, but very little content, address communities like the African community or the Nigerian business, for example. So as a Nigerian business owner, you're reading about digital marketing, but the case studies are all case studies of people who live in the US. The statistics are all statistics of people who live in the US, right? So when you consume content like this and you know that, okay, you found this thing really, really valuable, next thing I think about is how do I bring this home, right? And then I start thinking of writing this content and creating this research in a way that is valuable for the African and the Nigerian market and business owner. So it's it's super important that you consume more content for inspiration. This will always help you have content ideas. You know what people are talking about, you know what people are consuming, you know what people are engaging with, and this will then inform you. And why this is also very, very important is when you finally create content. Your content is created based on insights that you already have from what people are consuming, as opposed to just like having all sorts of random ideas, creating stuff, and then nobody's engaging with it, right? Because you don't know, and because you've taken yourself away from communities that would have, sort of given you an insight into what people are looking out for and what actually consuming on the web. Like I said before when we started the training, there are a lot of brands that inspire me with their writing and their blog posts, on digital trends. But like I said again, there's not a lot of content for the African market. So when I consume these different content, I then come back to say, what do I want to communicate as a brand, right? We are targeting the Nigerian African market first. So we then, create that content because it's relevant content, but targeted for the African and Nigerian business owner. And when these Nigerian and African business owners read our content and read another content, they always find us more useful, more easy to apply, and more relatable, right? But again, like I said, this just to inspire you to be able to create content and make sure that you have content for your platforms every single day. Now, repurposing your content. This is like the most important part of this session, and this is what we're going to be talking about the most. So, repurposing your content is another way for you to always have content. And earlier I talked about creating a blog post for how to protect your accounts from hack, right? And I talked about how I was able to use or how I created this content again for our Instagram pages and every other channel. So repurposing your content is very, very, very simple, right? It can be as simple as this piece of content did very well, I'm going to post it again, right? But then it can be a bit more complex when you think about it this way. You have a blog post and you think about this blog post, it got a lot of engagement, it got a lot of feedback. I want to repost this content, I want to put it in different formats. So it's almost like, going for a meeting, and after the meeting, they now tell you that, oh, the meeting is now in downloadable format, it's now on DVD, or it's now on our website for you to consume, right? So they've literally taken the entire meeting or the entire seminar or whatever physical meeting that you attended and put it in a different form, right? And you can now consume it after that, after that particular meeting. So that's just what repurposing your content is, if I would explain that. Now, content is still king. Like I said when we started, content is king, but distribution is the queen. And if you play chess, you know how strong the queen is in the game of chess. Right? And when it comes to digital marketing and strategy, you realize that it's more like a game of chess than a straightforward, go on digital platforms and just create content kind of thing. It's more like a game of chess. You have to always think about what you want people to do when they see your piece of content, how you want them to react. Now, rather than trying to produce more and better content, marketers are now redefining their strategies to focus on distribution plans and how they can actually make use and squeeze more juice from the content they have already created. So why is repurposing very, very important? Now, when you repurpose content, the first thing that it does for you is it ensures that you don't have to create content every single time, right? And you will hear this a lot when they will tell you you don't have to reinvent the wheels. In fact, um, a colleague of mine said something I learned a couple of years ago, right? He said some of the best creators, some of the people who have done like the best works are the best copy and pasters, right? This doesn't literally translate to you copying and pasting other people's work. Um, um, but what it means is looking at what is already working and not having to reinvent the wheel, but taking that and recreating it for a different purpose. Now, so with repurposing your content, you don't have to create content every single day. You just have to look at what is already working and put it out there in a different format. To an extent, it will require you to do certain amount of work, but then that's taking away the work of having to think about the content in the first place. And for business owners, marketers, people who do communication, realize that thinking about content you want to create most times is harder than creating the actual content because until you know what you want to do, right? Doing it, if I give you, it's like having ingredients and everything, but not knowing what you want to make, right? The moment you know the food you want to make or what you want to make with all of what you have, you can now make use of these things. Um, so you just have to work on putting the content that you have already created out there, right, into a different format and into the hands of more people. So repurposing your content doesn't just mean you are taking something from a particular form and putting it in a different form. It also helps you to reach more people, right? And these are the three different benefits that you get from repurposing your content. So the first thing that it does for you is to reach new audiences. Maybe like, okay, yeah, but I'm sharing to the same people. You may be sharing to the same people, right? But these people all consume content differently. So if you bring 100 people together and ask them what they would most likely do if they try to make jollof rice, for example, they'll all tell you different things. There are people who would go on food blogs and actually read step by step how to make something, maybe how to bake a cake. And there are people who will just finish reading and feel like I did not catch anything from this thing, and they need to watch a YouTube video. So they'll tell you they prefer to watch YouTube videos. They prefer to listen to a podcast because when they listen to podcasts, they imagine things differently. They like to have it as something they can access on their phone, so like a PDF or an ebook. So you see that people consume content totally differently, right? And while all of these people may be in your contact list, they may not be engaging with your post. So you have a blog post that went out on a particular topic, and out of 1,000 people who are subscribed to your channel or to your list or that follows your blog, you discover that you only have like less than half of them read that particular blog post, like really read it and engage with it. Others have seen the topic, but they're like, nah, I'm not sure I want to read how to knot a tie on your blog, right? But then you've written a step-by-step guide of how to knot a tie. And then you realize that, okay, people actually engaged with this thing. How can I repurpose this thing? I decided to create a video format of, what you just talked about, right? Or do something different, whatever the topic is, right? So it helps you reach new audiences, engage your current audience who may not have engaged with that post because it's not their preferred form of content. Um, then the other thing it does is it reinforces your message in a different way. I find this and a typical example would be if you read books, right? The effect for reading books is always different. The effect you get when you read books is always different from the effect you get when you listen to audiobooks. So I'm not saying that one is better than the other one. It's just a preferred choice, right? For me, right, the smell of an actual book, and not just any actual book of brown paper books. It's always different. It has this feeling. I don't know. I can't say why it's special, right? But maybe it just makes me think about like early stages of reading and when I really love to open my books and read. So the feeling is always different, right? It feels like a vacation into your books. But if you live in a city like Lagos, and especially during times when you have to go out every single day, you realize you don't have time to read. And the moment you pick up a book to read, you are distracted, you are either tired, you're hungry, everything around you, you are restless, and you just need to rest. And and then you find out, or I found out that audiobooks do better, right? Because I can easily consume this content anywhere. But not just that, right? The authors of these books most times have an opportunity to reinforce their messages, especially when they record the audios after they have released that book. So if you have written a blog post about a particular topic, when you record an audio, when you're recording an audio format, maybe as a podcast or as a video or something, right? You have the opportunity to reinforce your message, to go deeper into certain things, to share more than you would have shared, or to even update, simply update whatever data it is that you've created for before. And the final thing, and one of the most important things for me is how it improves your organic visibility. Because then, like I said, you have reached more audience, you have been able to reinforce your messages, and you're now on multiple platforms that you would have been if you had just left your blog post or your content format in one place. So yeah, these are three things that I really like about the opportunities that repurposing your content does for you. Now, um, on this part of the training, we'll talk about what kind of content you can repurpose. Now, you can repurpose just about anything. Like, you can literally just take a blog post and just put it on a Word document and make it a PDF and then put it download, right? That's, you've repurposed that piece of content. You can you can literally do anything, right? You can finish recording a webinar and feel like, yeah, this webinar I need to put it on YouTube, right? Or I should create a slide out of it. You can literally do anything that you want to do. But like anything else, that works, you need to have a strategy. When I talk about strategy, I don't mean like you have to start thinking about cumbersome things, right? It's as simple as thinking about what you want to achieve with this other piece of content. So, for example, when I do a piece of post, right, I think about the reaction I want my audience to have. I'm thinking about what I want them to do after reading that particular piece of content or after watching that particular video, right? And it's my call to action. So you have to then think about what you want to achieve. If not, repurposing content will just be another. It may have saved you hours of work, but then you still waste another 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever amount of minutes that you put into creating that new form of content. Because then it won't give you a result. So you have to think about what you want to achieve. Now, in terms of thinking about what you want to achieve, you have to think about what you want people to do with that piece of content, right? When they see it. So an example would be, let's say, for example, when you wrote that piece of content, your goal was to get more subscribers for that your blog post, right? You're getting more subscribers and getting more subscribers. And then now your goal is either to upsell people, to cross-sell them some kind of, or, service, right? Um, I can now say, okay, you know what? I want to have a training out of this, right? By doing a training, I can reinforce my blog post on 5 reasons why you need a strong digital strategy in 2021. And by me having that webinar, I can reinforce that message. I can talk about it deeper than I would have. But now my goal is different, right? Because after now, I'm going to get people who are going to either, first of all, subscribe to my channel again, but then reach out to me to say, you know what, I really enjoyed the class and I would like to engage you on a different level, which is maybe have a training with my team or, help me create a strategy for my business and my brand. So you see now that I've been able to use that one piece of content by repurposing it. I've also achieved a different goal. So your goals will be different, right? Or maybe different for each piece of content that you create. You must always think about it and ask yourself, what do I get out of this? Because your repurposed content is just as important as the first or original form of content that you have created. Sometimes even more important because we'll realize sometimes that we write a piece of content or a blog post at a time where it's not actually hot, right? And then you realize that 15 weeks later, right, something you wrote about before is now like so important because now there's a pandemic and 2 years ago you talk about something, people didn't take you serious, they're taking you serious now. So now repurposing that content is now even more important than the repurposed content rather is now more important than the actual original content that you have created. Now, when you're deciding what piece of content to recycle, or to repurpose, one thing you have to think about is, like I talked about just now, is to define purpose for each new content. But then to determine that this content is worth repurposing, you have to audit your current content, because that's where you're going to be getting your piece of content from. So auditing your current content, you want to look at, I mean, a lot of things, but I've listed three different things here. The first one is to identify evergreen content. Now, there are two kinds of content that you can create as a brand, as a person, or any for any reason, right? Um, the first, which is something I've already written here, is evergreen content. So evergreen content is simply content that is evergreen, like the name says. So an example of evergreen content would be, I'm saying how to knot a tie as an example, because the first time I ever knotted a tie, I read it off a blog. And the blog had, I think it was Wiki Now or something, and they had diagrams of fold here, fold here, fold here. Very weird. So, but there'll always be people who are wearing ties for the first time, right? Or there nobody will be born with an encyclopedia of how to knot a tie. You either have to ask somebody, or if you are like me, wake up in the middle of the day or very early in the morning and realize that you're on your own and you have to like Google it. So that is evergreen content. It may not be hot, right? But people would always go back, and you find comments like, "Oh my God, thank you. I found this very, very useful. It was very, very timely based on when they have, they read that particular piece of content." So I'll give you another example. I used to love to use Microsoft Excel a lot. And one time I was working on a very large database, and I was trying to organize data that has been given to me by different people, right? And it was like data of like maybe over 10,000 lines of data. And each person had sent their own different formats. And I needed to format this thing and not do it manually. So I looked for different ways to do this, different formulas, no formula, nothing. Each formula will mess the content up because it's either merge stuff together. After hours running into maybe a day or two, I found a piece of, hacks that I use, multi formulas, and it worked for me. I was super excited. I was the happiest person on the earth at that moment. And then I realized something. That's when I just got into YouTube, that each time I Googled for this problem, I would find a lot of people have searched for it, um, but no results, like no solution. So one day I turned on my computer in the middle of the night and recorded my screen solving this problem, right? Until today, like that video has like mind-blowing amount of views on there, like over 100,000 views on there. On a very whack channel, very whack. It still has noise, background noise on the video. Um, and poorly produced, right? But it's evergreen content because, like I said, people wake up every single day, face to that challenge that I have. They cannot find solution for it. And you will see comments like, oh my God, this is even simpler than the solution that Microsoft has now released. So that's like an example of evergreen content, something that's always going to be very, very useful, regardless of time and season. Another example that's very obvious would be how to cook jollof rice, for example. People always like, Google how to cook jollof rice. Um, Another thing that you also look out for when you're auditing your content is to track high performing content, right? High performing content is probably the greatest signal that you need to create this content again. So again, I'll give you another example, right? Um, so once I talked, created a video for a community, how to fix how to fix a problem if Instagram keeps blocking you from taking certain actions, right? And people will always ask me. I said, oh, this content was performing really, really good. So I decided to use that content to create like a swipe post and say, step-by-step guide, how to fix this if it happens to your Instagram channel. Again, I looked at what that particular content was doing for me as a blog post, and then I decided to use it, to create. And like I said, checking content that's already performed, good or really, really great as a blog post or as a video, is like the biggest indicator that it's going to perform very well. Remember when we talked about why you should repurpose content? It's about reaching new audiences, right? So you have an audience on Instagram or on Facebook that currently doesn't engage with you on your other channel, right? Once you determine, or once you detect that this particular piece of content has done very, very well on this particular channel, you then move it to that other channel. There's a very, very high chance that it's going to perform well on that channel. Another thing you also want to look out for is to follow the comments, right? So if someone produces a piece of content, I look at the comments. The comments also direct what people are expecting me to create, right? So for example, the piece of content that talks about, oh, um, maybe if Instagram says to block your account one day, right? And you can't like, you can't comment, you can't do anything, do XYZ. And you start asking me things like, oh my God, like, okay, what do I do in cases like this? What do I do in cases like this? I can then repurpose that content and create it again and say, maybe the first time I've talked about if you can't comment on Instagram. Second time I'm going to say if you can't like on Instagram, right? And then I create the content in a way that addresses that particular challenge. So this can be for literally anything. I'm talking about very, very techy things because that's what I do. But it can be for literally anything. So I'll say, for example, you're a fashion brand, right? And over the holidays, you have written, or over the last few months, you have written a blog post for how to style, this particular kind of clothes or this particular kind of, outfits, right? There are people who like to consume content that is visual, right? So now stores are open, right? And it's called that blog post really got a lot of views and feedbacks because people were actually going on there to read and look at the pictures. You can then get a member of your team to recreate. So when I talk about repurposing your content, like I said, you still have to put in work, right? But you now know what to create and you already have the direction, you already have the strategy. So you can get a team member of the team or you as the business owner say, I'm going to show you 5 ways to wear this particular outfit from my store, right? And then people can then watch that video, right? Or you can create a swipe post and then say, because you have gotten so much from that, in the future, maybe in 2 or 3 weeks' time, you can say, which of this is your favorite look for this particular outfit, right? Everything has come from just one particular blog post that has gone into a video, an IGTV video, a short video, can even become a TikTok video, and then a swipe post for Instagram. You can actually make a swipe post for LinkedIn as well, just in case everybody's wondering why am I talking about Instagram a lot. So there's a hack for creating swipe posts on LinkedIn. If you put multiple pictures on LinkedIn, LinkedIn would only take 4 pictures at once and it just scatter them as random pictures. But if you save the pictures as a PDF, LinkedIn will allow you swipe. So that's the hack I just thought I should share. So you can write that down for, if you intend to create a really nice piece of content for um, your LinkedIn. Now, here's where I'm going to share strategies for repurposing content. So I've talked about why repurpose content. I've talked about tips for creating content. So now I'm going to talk about how you can actually repurpose content and different strategies that you can use. This is like the sweetest part of this session. So the first thing and the most obvious thing, and you'll be like, yeah, this is very obvious, is simply republish your content, your existing content. Here is like you don't even have to do anything, right? It's just me going back to say, last year I published the content. For example, I talked about trends, right, that you're going to see in 2020, and I discovered that these trends are still like maybe the biggest trend. I can repost that particular content exactly the way it is, right? But then for that kind of content, for that kind of content, I have to then update it with what the new trends are and what people should focus on this year. And here's a better example, right? If I do a blog post last year, right, to talk about how to protect your account from hack, right? I can easily republish that content again now because it's exactly going to be the same thing that you need to do. I can also post a piece of blog last year, again, like I said, to talk about, let me not do something very, very techy. Let me just even talk about solo fights. I think that's simple and as obvious as solo fights, right? I can repost that particular piece of content again, right? This time, just maybe use a different picture, use a different heading, and add something to just tweak it up. But you just simply repurposing your content. You can easily repurpose your content by just reposting it the way it is because there you can reach more people. And reposting the way it is doesn't mean you have to then like write a new blog post and sort of splash that same blog post on your blog, right? It may just be you putting it on the social media on page or moving it from, example, LinkedIn has a blog feature where individuals can have like long form blog post. So I can say that, okay, I want to repost this exactly the way it is, and then I put it on my LinkedIn. Maybe at the footer of my LinkedIn, I can drive traffic back to my website by saying this blog was originally published on john.com, right? And then I can think about different platforms like Medium or any other platform that allows me to put long form blog posts. Facebook even allows you to put like very, very long posts. So if your post is if your post can be contained into your Facebook feed, why not post it on Facebook? There are people who appreciate reading long stuff, right? It's just simply publishing your contents, like I said. Another thing is to turn your blog posts into podcasts. So, like I said, once you've identified what your top performing posts are, right, you can then go back and say, okay, let me repurpose this as a blog, as a podcast, right? So, if you're starting a podcast this year or as part of a strategy, right, and you're thinking of content ideas, you can easily just go back to all of your last blog posts and try to talk about them. There are people who like to listen to podcasts and who have not read your blog post. There are people who have read your blog post, but it's going to hit differently when they actually listen to you talk about it. Plus, the kind of questions and engagement you will get will be totally different. Again, like I said, it's also going to help you boost your organic reach, right? Which is also very, very important. So, I mean, who cares whether you have thought about the same thing in your blog post, right? People have listened to it and they're commenting on it again. So, as somebody who's looking for engagement, it's a win-win for you. Another thing that it does for you and that you can do rather is to offer, and you record your existing content as a webinar, right? As well have just posted this as a blog post, right? But now we're having it as a training session. Now I haven't even had it as a blog post, so I'm thinking about this now. After this session, I'm going to write about this as a blog post. So this is something you can do. You can record as an online course as well. So if you don't want to have a repeat webinar every single time, right? And you feel like this content is actually very, very useful, I can record it and put it as a course. Now, I'm talking about a course and a webinar for two different reasons, right? Remember when we started, we talked about what do you want to achieve with each piece of content. So the first time I wrote it as a blog post, right, it was just free out there, everybody could read it, right? But now I'm repurposing it for an online course. So definitely I've updated it. Before I just had the how, the why, the whys, But now I can tell you about the hows, like, how to actually do the things I'm talking about. I can hold your hands. Now I've repurposed it, right, and added more details, made it more in-depth, and I can make it an online course. In this case, it is solving a different problem or it's achieving a different goal, which is sales, right? So like I said before, think about what you want each new piece of content to achieve for you, right? It can be new signups for your newsletter. It could be new signups for any kind of thing that you want people to sign up for, right? For this particular piece, course, it is to generate sales, right? And that's why I have listed webinars and costs. And webinars could be paid for, it could be free as well. You could also use your blog content for video creation, right? This is very obvious. You've written a blog post, like I talked about the example for a fashion store, right? You cannot create a video on YouTube or something, right? If it's a makeup brand or a beauty brand, you can easily just talk about, routines of how to take care of your skin, right? And get somebody in your office to use the products that you sell to create content for your YouTube channel. And again, this content can now be repurposed to create social media posts, right? So if you've talked about like maybe your morning routines every day, right? Like you've done a video for it, you can easily create a swipe post, right? And just say, when you wake up every morning, here are 5 things you can do with our product. So swipe screen number 1, use X amount of product to clear your skin, use X product to do exfoliate your skin, use X product to do this, use X product to do that, right? So you can literally, it could be a service, it could be tips that you're sharing, right? We've talked about these different tips in a video before. You can now use these tips as a swipe post. I remember the tip I gave before about how to convert swipe posts for LinkedIn. So you can easily save it as a PDF again and put it on LinkedIn, or put it on Facebook as a post on Facebook as well. Now you can turn internal data into case studies. This is something that we've done at Futuresoft, right? So by internal data, right, you're not limited to just blog posts, right? So this is what I want to say. You're not limited to just blog posts, because it almost feels like, oh, okay, I have to repurpose blog posts, I have to post YouTube videos or something I've created before. Or it could be internal things. So we see brands a lot. You do a lot of work as brands, right, or as businesses internally. And those should be able to, there are things that you should be able to share as content that have been repurposed. So we worked on a particular brand, and we were able to create like their branding from scratch. We branded the entire brand, created a new face for them online. And, we are always proud when we look at the work that we've done for this brand. But I mean, how do we just come out and do a YouTube video? I'm like, hey guys, we're excited about this brand, so we thought about telling you about this brand. Yeah. So it's still raw data. For us, it makes a lot of sense, but people out there, it's just data, right? But we can then repurpose this, right, and create like case studies from it, which what we did. So we created a case study and we talked about the process and what we learned, the lessons, what we were thinking about when we were making their logo like this, what we were thinking about when we were designing their packaging like this, what we were thinking about when we wrote this for them. So brands and businesses and marketers and could just learn from like the process. So now be able to convert that data, internal data, to something that people can consume out there, right? It could be as simple as after like maybe 12 months of working from home, we now decide to release a case study or an ebook to talk about the impact of COVID-19 in the workspace and how like brands can efficiently like, manage working from home, right, with their teams. And this can go out as a case study. So you can literally make a case study or, useful data out of internal data that you have in your office. Um, and these are reports. These are, for example, you would see at the end of the year, a lot of brands would release things like reports. These are brands that do research internally, right? They will not do reports to tell you that, oh, this is what this year is going to look like for digital marketing space. This is what this year is going to look like for consumer retail. This is what this year is going to look like for the food and drinks industry. So all these are internal data again, like I said, that you can bring out as data that people can consume. You can make a slide deck for slide share. So an example would be what we're doing right now. So I can literally just put this slide without doing anything on slide share so people can actually use it. Again, it has the same information, but I'm reaching a new audience that I don't have right now in this training. You can use testimonials. So this is something we see a lot, but people do that a lot for their websites, right? You have a testimonial section for their website, but as part of your content or your social media pages or your different channels that you manage, right? Testimonials can be part of it. You can even have a weekly newsletter or a monthly newsletter where at the end of newsletter, you now add like a testimonial for what your customers or your clients are talking about and are saying about you. And then you could chop longer content into bite size for social media posts. So I'll give an example of somebody who does this a lot. Gary V on somebody I know that does it a lot. His name is Gary V on Instagram, right? And he has like so many videos on his channels, but those videos are basically videos that are come out from like longer YouTube videos. So it's you basically. So if you've created lots of videos in the past, you guys go and watch like an entire training session that you had, and just chop out a 1 minute, just clip from that and put it as useful content that you can just consume. And you can take that and use it as many times as you want. Just take different parts of it. So an example would be me having a digital marketing training or a webinar, right? And I decided to cut out a part where I'm talking about strategy or I'm talking about choosing the right platforms. And I felt like for 1 minute, I was just talking about how to choose the right platform for your social media pages, right? Think about this, do all of this audits, and then it will help you identify what channels are right for you. It's very simple. It's a part of a longer training, but I can cut that part out, right? And use it to create short content for my different channels. So another thing you could do is to update old blog posts. So this is almost like part of the example when it comes to the first tip I share, which is basically just reposting your blog posts, right? But then you have to be careful. Your blog post that you published last year would have changed, data would have changed, a lot of things would have changed. So you can go back on there and do that. Now there's a particular blog that does this a lot. Buffer does this a lot on their blog posts, and a couple of other channels that I've read. And I'll give you an example, right? So this account or these guys, this team, they created a blog post for like a guide on social media banners, right? Like sizes for different social media banners. So I remember that years ago, maybe 2015 or something, I was trying to like, create banners for a particular client. And I wanted to be sure the actual sizes, right? Because the banner for Facebook wouldn't work as a banner for Twitter. And I saw this blog post, it has all of this information. It was really cool, it was sweet. And then, a couple of months later, this channel decided to update their platforms and, they can't use the same banners again. So what these guys would always do is they would go back and instead of writing a new blog post, they just update that particular blog post. And then they would write at the subject of at the header or the title of the blog post, always up to date, updated. So when you read it this year, it will be 2020's guide to social media banners, right? When you read it next year, it will be 2021 or 2022 or 2023. You just have to update the title and update the piece of content in there and just repost it again. Another thing you could do is to use statistics for social media content. So this could be something you get out of a webinar, get out of a training, get out of a YouTube video or from a blog, right? So if in my blog post I have written that last year, 80% of content on the web or on the entire internet was videos, right? Did you know? As part of a blog post, maybe I was talking about trends or I was talking about why brands should start creating more videos this year, right? And then I probably mentioned the statistics. I can easily take out that statistics and post as a social media post and say, did you know that last year XYZ happened, XYZ happened, right? Um, and then another part that's really, really cool and I really like and I feel like is new, right, is to offer guest contributions for topics that you already covered. Now, this is even one of the most effective way to reach a new audience, right? Because then you can easily take like this valuable content, go to somebody else's platform and contribute it, right? So if you're a blogger, you can easily give somebody permission to post your blog and mention that you are the author, right? Or you can have like an account as a contributor on these different blog posts. So it's as simple as me having a post on Medium and then maybe being an editor or a contributor on Forbes magazine, for example, or Forbes blog. And I can easily just repost everything I post on my blog on Forbes, right? Or you can also take a different dimension, which is me, meeting somebody who is very popular on Instagram, contributing my swipe post, and they will just mention me, right? And say this swipe post was done by John. So when somebody reads that piece of content and they really like the information on there, for example, the information on what to do if your account is hacked, for example, and you find it on a very, very like a community that has a huge following, the first thing you think about is who created this piece of content, and then you sort of come back to me, right? And if you find other piece of content that I've created very, very valuable, you definitely hit the like button, hit the follow button, or whatever it is, and then start engaging with me on my different platforms. So this is the part where I come to the end of our session for today. I hope that it was insightful. You learned a couple of things from there. If you have questions, this session where you get to ask us your questions. So you can easily just wave if you have questions, or mute yourself and ask.
Hi, good
Does anyone?
afternoon, everyone. My name is David.
Hi, David.
Yeah,
Welcome.
John, thank you so much for this session. Mine is basically not a question, but more or less just to appreciate you for how much you talk about the content strategy. And I think the key part for me was the aspect where you really focused on the different stages or the different approaches we can use in proposing content. And I feel that was very insightful and helpful. Thank you so much for doing a great job on that.
Thank you so much for the feedback, David. I really appreciate this. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So you can leave your questions in the chat. Um, or you can also sort of wave and unmute yourself to ask questions. So we're exactly 1 hour through our training session. So while that is happening, while I'm waiting for any questions or feedback, I want to say thank you so much for, as much as we decided to share everything that we're learning within the team with everybody out there, we also appreciate the fact that um, you are giving us this time, sharing your lunch time. So that's why it's called Lunch and Learn. Giving out this particular time in your schedule for the day to actually share with us and learn with us. So we're really excited, and we hope to have you for our subsequent Lunch and Learn series. Okay, so
John, I just wanted to say, well done. I think you did a really great job. And I hope that everyone who joined us, learned a lot. I think that there's a lot of valuable information. And just to say that we're going to be continuing Lunch and Learn every 2 weeks on Mondays at 12 p.m. And we're going to also, publicize that on our social media channels and share on WhatsApp and our newsletter as well for anyone who would want to join. Please tell your friends if you enjoyed this session. We're going to also upload it on YouTube at a later stage and share that as well so that anyone who is interested can watch it later. Thank you very much for sharing your time and your lunch break with us.
I just said, I'll be away there.